In this video, what we're going to do is give our users the ability to sign up to our application. So remember, Superbase does a lot of the internal stuff for us. So remember all of these different steps, it does all those for us. All we have to do is just call Superbase with the email as well as the password, and then it's just going to do all of this logic for us. So it's going to validate the email, check if it's already in our database. If it is, then it's going to throw an error, and then it's going to store the email as well as the hashed password right over here. So if you click on authentication, you can see over here, this is all of our different users. Right now, of course, we have none. Now, we could also log in by phone, but we're going to choose email for this. And of course, it's not even going to show us the password because this is something that we really shouldn't see. So it's going to store the password in the database. However, it's going to be hashed and it's not really going to be visible for us. So this just adds an additional layer of security. Okay, so this is looking really great. Let's just go ahead and implement this. So in order to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another composable. This is going to be a useAuth composable. So I'm going to say useAuth.ts. So in here, we're going to store a few things. So I'm going to say useAuth. And over here, I'm going to go ahead and create this function. And let's just go ahead and do an export default of useAuth. So in here, we're going to have multiple things. So we're going to have a piece of state. And this is going to be the user that we are logged in as. So over here, I'm going to say const user. And I'm going to say that this is going to be useState. Remember, we're not going to use ref or reactive in composables just because of data leaks. I'm going to call this user. And for now, we're going to have a function that's just going to return null. So initially, this is going to be our user. So once we log in, what we want to do is we want to change this value to an object, maybe that has the email and other information about that particular user, including maybe like the ID or whatever. So this is, again, the user themselves. So once we log in, we want to change this. Now, another thing that we're going to have is a bunch of functions. So we're going to go here. Let's just return the user. But we're also going to have a bunch of functions that allow us to do the basic authentication stuff like logging in, signing up, logging out, etc. So let's just begin with signing up. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to create a function called signup. Now over here, let's create this function. And I am also going to return this function like so. Now this function is very simply going to just call the Superbase method with the email as well as the password. So over here, we're also going to pass in as a parameter the email as well as the password, as well as any other data that we want to provide for our user. Now for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the email, I'm going to grab the password, and I'm going to grab everything else into its own object called, let's say, meta for metadata. So that's exactly what we're going to do. I mean, you can even call this even metadata just to be more specific, like so. So this is just other information that we want to store for the user. So if we want to do that, we can just, catch it right over here inside of this meta object. This is just a JavaScript syntax. If you're unfamiliar with this, I highly suggest that you go ahead and just do a little bit of research on it. So now in order to sign up, what we're going to do is, well, we're going to call Superbase. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to have access to Superbase. So I'm going to say const, and then over here, I'm going to say use Superbase. So use Superbase like so. And then I am going to access Superbase. Superbase like so. So remember, we have access to this because we have created it. Now in here, what we can do is mark this as async because this is going to be an asynchronous request. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to say await. And then I'm going to say Superbase dot auth dot sign up, or sign up like so. Maybe we can even call this sign up like this just so we can be consistent. And that's really all it is that we need to do. So we can go ahead and call this now, and we can pass in, well, a bunch of different information. So we can pass in the email. So it needs the email. It also needs the password. And if we want to supply it with other data, what we can do here is we can have an optional object, and we can say that the data is going to be the metadata that we have over here. So any other data that we want to add. And that's pretty much all it is that we need to do. That's it. Very, very, very simple. So what we can do here is we can actually extract a few things from this. So this is going to return an object to us. If everything is successful, it's going to return the user themselves, as you can see here. Now, this is going to conflict with this user that we called over here. So I'm just going to call this... I'm just going to call this U like this. I'm going to rename it to U. And then another thing that's going to give us is the error, just in case an error occurs, because an error could occur. Maybe we're trying to sign up with an email that already exists. So we can just go ahead and grab that error. So if an error occurs, let's just go ahead and throw an error. So if error, we're going to throw the error itself, because this is, again, going to be an actual API error. So it's not going to be... like a message or whatever. It's an error. We're going to throw it, and it's going to have all the default Supabase messages that's going to tell us. Now, if everything is okay, then what we're going to want to do is, well, just return the user. Now, this is looking good. However, we haven't changed, or no, sorry, not returned user, returned you. Now, however, we haven't really changed the user over here in our state. So in order to do this, what we can actually do, and this is really, really cool, I can say supabase.auth, and then over here, there is something called onAuth change. So whenever there's some sort of authentication change, what's going to happen is this function is going to be called, and it's going to be treated like a listener, and it is going to execute this callback, and in this callback, we can have whatever logic that we want. Now, this is going to take in two things, the event, and we've looked at the event before, but it's also going to take in the session. And the session is essentially the current authentication state of the user at this point. So what we can do here is we can say, well, the user.value is equal to the session.user. Now, this might not exist if we're not logged in, so we can say session.user or null, like this. And this is going to automatically change the current state of the user. So now we'll always know if we're logged in or we're logged out. So that's pretty much it. Now let's go ahead and give this a test. So I'm going to go here into, I'm going to go over to the card. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the sign up from use auth, and I am just going to create so we have a button here, so we have the submit button. I'm gonna create another function called handle submit. So let's create this function, handle submit, and let's also even grab the current user. So I'm gonna say user like this, and this function, of course, what we're gonna eventually want to do is just grab the values from the input. But for now, I'm just gonna call the sign up function, and I'm going to pass into it an email, and this has to be a real email. I have this email called blumbercourse@gmail.com, and for my password, I'm gonna just say just a generic password. And what I want to do is when I click this button, we're gonna call this function. So let's go over here and let's add an @click, and then over here we can do handle submit. Now we can make this logic a little bit better later. Obviously, we don't want to call this hard-coded sign up, but I just want to see this in action. So let's just see if this works. So let's go here, and what I'm gonna do is let's go over here. Let's also grab the user, and let's go back to our application. Let's see if any error occurs. So I'll open up the console, and I'm just very simply going to just click this button. Remember, when I click this button, it's going to call this sign up route with this email and password. So let's just click submit, and you can see there's some logic that occurred. Now, just to double check that everything is fine, just click it again. Now, you can see here, now we can't even click it again because for security reasons, it has a rate limiter, which is really great. Now, how do we know that this worked? Well, what I can do is I can actually go to that email and I can refresh this email. And you can just very simply see what Supabase actually does is it needs to confirm the email just to ensure that this is an actual real email, so nobody can just spam us with a bunch of fake emails. And so you can see that we have this really cool email that we got, and it tells us, hey, you have to confirm your sign up to this application. Now, of course, in Supabase internally, we also have the ability to update this email and make it look a lot better. But how cool is that? And actually, if we go to auth right now, so if I go to auth, let's go to Supabase, where is it? Right here, so authentication, you can see that this user is actually inside our database and they're stored. So we have blumbercourse@gmail.com. However, we're waiting for their verification. So once they go ahead and they confirm their email, you can see that they get redirected back to this page. We can even change exactly where we want to redirect them a little bit later. But now they are completely signed in. So if I go here, you can see that this is an actual real user inside of my app. And if I were to go here and grab the user, so this user right here, let's just go ahead and I want to place it somewhere. Let's just place it here. And let's go back here. You can see now we have a bunch of information about that user. We have their ID, we have their email, we have whatever. So now if we have this, what we can very simply do now is, well, we're authenticated. We can just show you a bunch of authenticated things. And what we can do is we can grab this email right over here, or sorry, this ID, and we can say, I want to get all the notes for just this, just the user with this ID. So we can specifically give them their notes and not other people's notes. All right, so that's pretty good. I love it. It's awesome. So in the next video, let's work on the login, and let's also obviously just make this like really functional. Let's use the inputs from the form instead of just hard coding it. So we have created the sign up logic, which is really good. Now let's go ahead and create the login logic. Now this is going to be extremely similar to what we have done here. So I'm gonna go ahead and just create another function. I'm gonna call this login, and what this is gonna do is const, and it's gonna grab the user, which is we're gonna call it you, and then the error like so, and then what we're gonna do is just a very simple await use Supabase, and of course we have to mark this as async because this is asynchronous now. And we're going to say .auth, and then this is going to be called sign in. So sign in. And just so we can be consistent, let's actually call this also sign in right over here. And this is going to take in 2 parameters, of course. The first parameter is going to be an object that is going to contain the email as well as the password. Now over here, we can just grab that email as well as the password. Now we're not going to grab any metadata because we have already created this user. So over here, we can just supply it with the email and the password, and that should be it. Now again, this could throw an error, maybe if we have invalid credentials. So it's going to throw us an error. So if we have an error, then what we're going to do is very simply just throw that error. If not, we're going to return the user. Return you as in the user. Now again, we do not have to worry about actually updating this ourselves because then our authentication state will change and the session will change, and then it will call this callback and update it for us. So we have this nice listener right over here. So over here, let's just pass in sign in. And that's pretty much all it is. That was relatively simple. Look how easy that is instead of doing all these incredibly tough stuff. So that's pretty much all it is. So now in our card, what we can do is we can also grab the sign in function, and we can call this function whenever it is that we want. Now, of course, what I want to do is I want to conditionally call whatever function depending on this state right over here. So inside of this handle submit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if the auth state dot value, so if the auth state dot value equals, let's say, login, then I want to do some logic. Else, because again, it could be either one or the other. Else, then it is sign up. Let's just comment here, sign up. This one is going to be sign in. So over here, we're going to sign in. So let's just call the sign in function. We're going to call the sign in function with the email as well as the password. So let's create a state for this. Let's just say input. I'm going to call this, I'm going to give this reactive. And we here are going to have the password, which is going to be empty for now. And then the email, which also will be empty. And then over here, inside of this, what we're going to say is we're going to say email is going to be, and email is going to be the input dot email. So input dot email. And then also we're going to have the password that is going to be the input dot password. Now, of course, we need to two-way bind these things to the input themselves. So let's just say here v model, and I'm going to say input dot email like so. And then over here, let's do a v model, and I'm going to say input dot password. Looking good, just to make sure that everything's working fine, at least with the two-way binding. Let's just go over here and let's just render input dot password. And if that works, then the email should work as well. So, and let's remove this user. Let's, where is this user? Let's remove it because it's getting busy. So save that. Let's refresh. So now if I put in the password, you can see that the password is nice and two-way binded. Okay, looking great. So that is for signing in. Now, of course, we also have the sign up, which is going to allow us to, well, sign up. So this, we're going to really just pass in the same credentials. Again, for sign up, we could also pass in another parameter, which is an object, where we can store certain data. Maybe we also have their number and we want to store that. So we can put that in. But for our application, we're not going to do that. So that's it. That's all it is that we need to do. So let me actually go back here and let me re-add the current user. And the current user right now, we are currently logged in, as you can see. So we have this user. We could log out, which I think would be ideal for this case. So let's actually work on the log out functionality in the next video. In this video, what we're going to do is complete our authentication logic by adding a handler, a function that is going to give us the ability to sign out. So let's go over here. Let's just say sign out this time. Now, this is not going to need to take in an email or a password because that's all we're doing. All we're doing is signing out. So what this is going to do is going to give us an error back. It's not going to give us a user back because remember, we are logging out at this point. So what we can do here is just do await supabase.auth and then this time .sign out. And we can just invoke this. And essentially what this is going to do is just remove any sort of authentication logic from the session, especially the user themselves. Now, once it removes the user, then it's going to call this handler because, well, we have some sort of auth state change that occurred. And it's also going to make this user over here that we are storing inside of use state to be null as well. So very simple. And that's pretty much all it is. And let's just also, if we have any sort of error, let's just throw that error. So if we have any error with signing out. So let's go here. Let's just call sign out. And now let's actually see this in action. So I am going to go ahead and click sign out. And right now, what I wanted to do eventually is add a nav bar a nav bar at the very top that's going to give us the ability to sign out. But for now, I am going to create another function. So another, or maybe another button right here. So let's create this button. And this button is going to be, I don't know, log out. Or maybe we can even call the function itself directly. So sign out like so. So we're going to call the sign out function. We're going to call this, I don't know, log out or sign out, whatever it is that we want to call it. All right, so let's go ahead and save this. So when I log out, what it should do is clear the session inside of Supabase itself. And consequently, it should call that handler. And then we also should see all this user data be removed, because at this point it should be null. Let me just quickly refresh this just to make sure that the code is up to date. And now I'm going to go ahead and just click log out. And there we go. You can see now we are completely logged out. Now I'm going to remove this button for now, because this is something that we're going to actually have in the nav bar rather than, well, because this is a form that allows us to either log in or sign out. It wouldn't make sense to have this button here. So let's just remove that for now. But again, you can see we are completely logged out. So we tested out logging in. Or signing up rather. Now let's test out logging in or signing in. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to put in the actual email of the account that I created. So at gmail.com. And then over here, I am going to pass in a password, which I called password. And as you can see, I'm also two-way binding it. Let's remove that. And I am going to inspect just to see if there's any error. Now, if our authentication logic is correct, if I click this, there we go. Now I am nice and authenticated. How cool is that? And also another thing that we can do just to make things a little bit nicer is also we can just change the value of these. So we can say input.email, and we can change that value to be just an empty string. And then over here, we can say input.password. We can also change that value to be an empty string. Now let's go ahead and actually add back that button so we can log out. I just want to show you exactly what happens when an error occurs, when we put in an email and a password that doesn't exist in our database. So let's go here. And I'm going to go ahead and log out. So this should be gone. Now I'm going to say blumbercourse@gmail.com. And this time I'm going to put in a password. And I should probably even mark this as a password. But I'm going to put in a password. So remember, the password that is linked to this email is password. Now I'm going to put in password 123, which is the wrong password. And if I try to submit it, you can actually see we have this error being thrown. And let me zoom in here. So remember, inside of our auth handler, if any error occurs, we grab the error right here when we try to sign in or sign up, and then we throw the error, and then we don't return it because now we're catching early over here. But you can see now we're getting this error. So what we can actually do is we can put all this logic inside of a try catch block and then show the error message, whatever the error message is. So you can see this error message is invalid login credentials. So let's actually talk about how we're going to do that in the next video. The next step is to actually catch the error and present the error inside of the card itself. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to create a new piece of state, and I'm going to call this auth error. And initially what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it as an empty string. And then what I'm going to do is right over here, and I actually already did this. So right over here, we're going to create a p tag. And this is going to display the error itself. So I'm going to say auth error, which is going to be the error message. Now we only want to display this if, well, auth error has a valid value and it's not an empty string. Now another thing that we're going to want to do is probably change the color of this. So let's just give this a class of error. And let's go over here and let's just say error. Let's just change the color of it to red. So over here, right now it's an empty string, so we shouldn't see anything, and we shouldn't even add that particular p tag. But when we have an error, we're going to show it like this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually wrap all of this, because this right over here and this right over here, as you can see, they can potentially throw the error. So what we can do is we can actually wrap all this logic in a try catch block. So let's say try, and then over here catch, and we can catch any potential error. So we're going to put the try over here, and if we get an error, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign that particular error message. So remember, over here we get the error, and it is an object that has a message that has invalid login credentials. So what we can actually do now is just say auth error dot value is going to be error dot message. Now, one thing that we also have to do is we actually have to start awaiting this, because this step right over here is asynchronous. So we'll have to add an async here, and then we're going to have to await this. I'm going to get rid of this comment, and then also await this as well. And that's pretty much all it is that we need to do. So let's actually just give this a quick test. So I'm going to say blumbercourse@gmail.com, and then put in some gibberish password. And then right away, you can see now we have invalid login credentials. Now let me go ahead and refresh this. And let me put in maybe something that's not even an email. Still invalid login credentials. We're just using whatever error that we get back. Which is actually kind of a valid error message. So now that we know that everything is working fine, let's remove the user, because we don't need that anymore. Over here for the password, let's add the type of password so that we don't actually end up seeing the password. And over here, we can also add a type of email, but you know what? That's okay. I'm okay with that. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. We could also remove the error after a period of time, or if we decide to click on another thing, we can also remove the error. Click on another piece of state. So over here, we can also say auth error dot value is equal to nothing, just so we can clear the error. And I think that's pretty much it. That pretty much handles authentication. We are pretty done at this point. I'm going to remove the logout button again, because we're going to add that inside of the nav bar itself. So let's remove that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So now what we're going to do is, after we're authenticated, what we want to do is we want to redirect the user to the profile page, which we haven't created yet. And the profile page is where they're going to add the ability to add however many notes that they want. So let's do that in the next video. Once the user has successfully logged in or signed up, what we want to do is we want to redirect them to another page. Specifically, we want to redirect them to the /profile page, and this is where they can add and see all of their notes. Now, let's go ahead and do this for both cases, the cases where we sign in versus the case where we also sign up. Now, the sign in, so over here for the sign in phase, this is going to be relatively simple. For signing in, all I'm going to do is I'm going to use the use router composable. So over here, let's just say const router is equal to use router, and we've seen this before. Now, in the case where we want to log in or sign in, same exact thing. We're going to go ahead and first await this and check if we get any error. If everything is fine, then I'm going to say router.push, and I want to push into the profile. So into the profile page. Now, for sign up, it is going to be a little bit more complicated. The reason why is, for signing up, you actually have to go to your email, and then your email is going to redirect you to the page that we want to go to. So this is what we're going to do for sign up. For sign up, we're actually going to specify where we want to redirect inside of this object right over here. So we're going to say redirect to, and then I'm going to say in template literals, I'm going to say I want you to redirect to the URL that is the URL that we're currently using. So in this case, it's localhost 3000, but it could be, if we decide to deploy this, it could be mynotesapp.com or something like that. So what we can do is we can actually grab that by saying window.location.origin. And then we're going to say, I want you to redirect me to /profile. And if we even wanted to know that this is from the email and we wanted to maybe send off an event or some sort of segment event, what we can do is we can actually add a path parameter, and we can say, from email, we can say that this is going to be, or we can say something like source, we can say email or registration email, like so. So let's actually give this a quick go, see if this works a-okay. So I'm going to go ahead and try to create a new account. I don't believe this account over here. Well, actually, I'm going to use this one because I already have, I'm going to say 77 because I already have that one open here. I'll give this a password as well. I'm going to go ahead and submit. Then I'm going to go ahead and check my email. Maybe we can even have a message here saying, hey, go check your email for confirmation. I'm going to go here, check my email. I'm going to confirm. And when I click, it should redirect me to the /profile page, which it does. It does indeed redirect me there. Now, the only issue that we have is right now we're getting a 404 error because we don't have a /profile page. So let's go here and let's say /profile.view. And in here, I'm going to add a template. And I'm going to go here. I'm going to say template like so. And then let's have a div over here. And let us just say h1 notes app profile, whatever. And there we go. So now we actually have the page. So if I refresh, we have it. Okay, looking great. Now, one last little thing is I want to somehow let the user know that you should check your confirmation email, check your email for a confirmation email if you decide to go the sign up route. So over here, what we can do is we can actually show a piece of state saying show confirm email message like this. We can say ref, and we can say this like so, because I don't want to, because it's kind of a bad user experience if we just show them the actual form itself and we don't tell them, hey, you go check your confirmation email. So over here, this whole card itself, this will show as is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just wrap this inside of a div, wrap all the code inside of a div, like so. So everything should still look the same. So let's go here, refresh, like that. Okay. And I'm only going to show this if this value here, this show, where do we put this? Show confirmation email. This should be false initially. It should be a Boolean value. So if this is false, we're going to show all of this stuff. So we're going to say vif, and then we're going to say here, if show confirmation email is false. And then over here, we're going to have another div. And this is going to be a velse. So velse. And then in here, we can have, it's not going to be a pretty message, but nonetheless, it's going to be a message. So we're going to say here, let's just use the exact same h3. Let's just see here, check email for confirmation message. Something like that. All right, looking good. So I'm going to go here and say never. Now, this is login. Let's go ahead and try to sign up. Now, I'm going to sign up with an account that already exists, and it should trigger an error, actually. And it didn't for some reason. Let's go here. Let's go to the console. Let's try to sign up right now with a account. Sign up, submit. surprised that this is not working. Let's go over here. So let's go. So here's the show confirm message. So we have everything here in a try catch block. Okay, one thing that we're not doing is we're not changing the value of this. So let's just change the value of this to true, like so. All right, so let's try to sign up again. And let's just sign up with a different account. Password should be at least 6 characters. That's another error. And now, there we go. So we had this weird, ugly message, but nonetheless, we got a message.